A week or so ago, 6Sense published their 2024 buyer experience report. And I think for anyone that is in a go-to-market role, whether that is marketing, whether it's sales, customer success, product, any team that is focused on driving business, it has got some huge insights about the way that B2B buyers experience their own journey into purchasing your product. They interviewed just over 2,500 B2B buyers, and the average deal size was around $300,000 to $400,000. So these are not small purchases made on a credit card. These are considered purchases that take time. Now, here are some of the key facts that really jump out and will have you thinking about how you approach your own go-to-market. So firstly, the average buying process from start to end, which you'd assume is the purchase, is 11 and a half months. Well, you say, well, hang on, how can that be? Our average sales cycle is 3 months, is 4 months. So how can the average buying cycle be 11 and a half months? Well, that is because the report shows that the average time that a buyer has gone through their buying process before they first get in contact with a seller is about 70%. They've done a whole lot of work before your sales process actually starts. What are they doing here? Well, they're identifying the problem. They're figuring out whether they can solve that problem with existing tools, whether they can work with some of their consulting partners, whether they could change their process, whether they could just live with the problem. A lot has to happen before they get in touch with sellers. A second big learning about this point that only happens 70% of the way through is that 80% of the time it is the buyer that initiates that conversation. So whilst your SDR or your AE may think they've crafted the perfectly worded email, the most amazing LinkedIn in-mail connection, the perfect cold call, the reality is that 80% of the time it is the buyer that is initiating that contact, either by filling in a request or more likely responding to the email or the call that just happens to have landed in their inbox that time. And suddenly the SDR is telling everyone, oh, guys, girls, I've figured out this is the most amazing email text. They just happened to hit the inbox at the right time when the buyer was ready. Now, the third great insight about this thing that happens 70% of the way through the buyer's buying process is that 80% of the time, the first vendor that the buyer contacts wins. The person they pick up the phone to first is the one that they go on to purchase. They already know what they want to do before they start this engagement process with the vendors. So if you aren't the person that they picked up the phone to first, then you've got a very small chance of making that deal happen. So you might be thinking, well, what's the point in even trying to sell anymore if we've got to A, wait for the buyer to get 70% of the way through their process, that B, they're going to contact us 80% of the time, and C, if they don't contact us first, we're never going to win anyway, then what's the point of doing anything here? Well, this is where I would challenge you to be thinking about what has to happen in this 70% of the time. This is where, as Gartner talks about as their 6 stages of the buying process, buyers need to identify the problem. What is this thing that we've got to fix in our business? They've got to explore solutions. How might we solve that? Could we do it in-house? Could we do it with our people? Could we do it with a change of process? They've then got to figure out what requirements, what do they need this thing to do in order to solve it, well before they get to this point. So have a think about how you can actually create content, tools, events that are going to support them with these kinds of things. So we think about diagnostic tools. Not an ROI calculator that's going to be useful at the end of the process, but a problem identification diagnosis that's going to help them to understand their current state and how that's working. Maybe some benchmarking. What are other people doing? How long does it typically take to go through this process? And how does that compare with what they're doing? Maybe some project plans. If you've got to go through this buying process, then what does that typical project look like for a customer? Who needs to be involved? How long does it take? What typical templates or workflows are you going to need to go through this process? Put yourself in their mind and really think about how you can help them with this part of the process. You're far more likely to be the person that gets that call at 70% of the way through the process. Now, beware the trap that so many people then fall into. At some point here, your potential customer is going to engage in some content, come to an event. As they're researching, they're learning, they're figuring out their current state, they're trying to assess how they might approach this. If this suddenly triggers one of your marketing lead scoring levels, suddenly you've got your SDR ringing up, we've got a live one, let's get this fish on the hook. This person is not ready to buy yet. And if your number one call to action for this person is, can you jump on a meeting with our AE? Are you looking to do something this quarter? I can give you a great price if you can do something by December. You're just meeting this person at completely the wrong point in their process. Instead, figure out how you can help them with that. Now, as go-to-market leaders, that means you've got to start thinking about how you're going to compensate this person. Because if a traditional SDR or BDR or ADR is compensated on meetings that I booked this week or month, on qualified opportunities that were created, on revenue that's going to get closed this quarter or this month, then of course the incentive for your SDR or BDR is to drive this person relentlessly into a meeting when that is not what this person wants. So you might want to think about how you staff up those first responders, or how you compensate those first responders to meet the buyer where they are, not where your seller is. So I encourage you to go and have a look at the full report. Just Google 6Sense and the 2024 Buyer Experience Report. It's 65 pages of goodness, and it's broken down by different regions and geographies as well, so that you can get a bit more insight into the type of business that you're in. Enjoy, and I hope it really helps you to think more about your buyer's journey and not just about how you can sell to them.